Last draft season, I made a video titled Settling the Debate, Olu Fashanu or Joe Alt. This video swiftly became the second highest viewed video on my channel, and luckily for me, we have an even bigger debate on our hands this draft season. According to the consensus big board, LSU offensive tackle Will Campbell is the 8th best prospect in the 2025 NFL draft, along with the #1 offensive tackle in the class. And Texas offensive tackle Kelvin Banks, he's number 9. Today, I'm going to figure out who the better offensive tackle is, and if your team is picking in the top 10, which tackle should your team target? So, who is the better offensive tackle of the two? Let's find out. I won't waste any more of your time. Let's get right into the traits and debate who is better. How this will work is I will start with individual traits worth 1 point, then vitals and play techniques worth 2 points, and finally talk about the athletic and physical traits that are worth 3. Beginning with the traits that don't really fit into one of the following categories. IQ is where I will start, and this is where I have to be brutally honest about one of the prospects. Will Campbell's IQ as a blocker is very good for the most part. He's got great aggression that doesn't push the boundary, he's got a good understanding of different rushing schemes that teams bring at him, and he knows when to pull the trigger to transition from. The one problem with Campbell's IQ is blitz and late rush pickups. He will overcommit to a double team and ignore outside rushers that might start as a spy. When that guy finally goes to rush, Campbell will miss that pickup and allow a pressure to go his QB's way. This was most seen when Garrett Nussmeier was his quarterback. But he's not who I'm being critical of. The brutally honest part comes when I'm talking about Kelvin Banks. This section of his game could really use some work. Banks is often overly aggressive in the run game and is prone to inside rips. Banks is similar to Campbell with blitz pickup and needs to learn when to jump off a double team. I saw this part most against Georgia in 2024, but Banks also has a tendency to hold when he gets beat off the edge. It's just a conundrum that needs fixing on Banks' behalf. For that reason, Campbell easily takes the 1 point for this section. On to pad level, which isn't really a big deal if you're a great offensive lineman like these two are, but it is still a section in my grades. But I'll make this brief. Campbell's pad level needs some fixing. His play strength makes up for the sometimes high pad level, but even when he goes to make upfield blocks at the second level, he will miss the athletic linebackers because he just runs in there too high. Even in pass pro, he plays a little high, but it's not the most severe mistake in his game by any means. As for Banks, it's hard to get much better than his. It's not perfect because there were snaps where he played a little too low, but it's better than Campbell's, so Banks gets the point here to tie it up 1-1. To wrap up the 1-pointers, we have counter moves. How do these tackles react to inside pass rush moves or rips in the run game that go outside their normal technique? Well, Campbell is just about average, maybe above average with these moves. He's very good against bull rushes, but he's sometimes prone to those inside counter rushes because of his agility that falls flat. But he still does a nice job picking up these blocks quick, and he's smart enough to change his technique early. Banks is phenomenal at picking these up though. It's part of being an athletic tackle like him, but if he gets beat on the inside, he's able to adjust his technique and pinch a runner toward the middle. He does the exact same thing on outside rushers, except for the obvious pinching part, he pushes them way around the quarterback and he doesn't give them a shot to win the edge. But as I just said, if he does lose the edge, he has that holding tendency. Nonetheless, Banks gets this point to take the 2-1 lead. On to the 2-point sections, which has a section of traits, or traits that are more important than the ones we've already discussed. I'll begin with their vitals. This includes frame, injury history, on top of others. Let's switch it up and go for Banks' vitals first. These sit in the good section as he holds an above average frame for an offensive tackle prospect and has a lineman versatile upside because of his skill set and frame. Where I do get concerned are his medicals, where he had an ankle injury that sidelined him for the SEC championship, and then he briefly missed time against Arizona State as well. I have to question if surgery is potentially in the mix for this offseason. As for Campbell, his vitals passed the eye test. He has really good measurables and alignment versatility, but he excels in the medical portion. He missed one game his freshman season due to dehydration. He was hospitalized, which is concerning, but since then he has not missed a game. Complete opposite of injury prone in my eyes, which is why Campbell returns to the lead by getting these 2 points. Then we get into technique. I'll give 2 points for pass and 2 points for run, as these are just absolutely game changing at the next level. Beginning with Banks, who could potentially be controversial here. These sections are where I see Banks as more of a quote-unquote raw offensive tackle. He's not as raw as others I've scouted before. I'm pointing at, Amarius Mims, Paris Johnson Jr., but he's so inconsistent with his technique, it's hard not to give him this characteristic. In the pass game, Banks sometimes has great technique to maintain a pass rush, but most of the time he just plays too far away from his body and extends his arms too much. This makes him prone to chops and could get more holding penalties if he's beat off the edge. Now, I will say this, he for the most part is a good recovery blocker and will find ways to still win the rep despite bad technique. I thought he played a great game against Dallas Turner in 2023. That's a matchup where Campbell actually really struggled. In the run game, it's obviously not the same ordeal, but Banks just needs to stay patient and poised and become less hit happy. He's lost a blocking assignment because of his aggression in the run game. His leg drive will get too hot and he ends up losing his balance. As for Campbell, he's not as raw as Banks, but still has inconsistent technique. I see this most in the run game, where he explodes to his assignment and will fail to sustain him if he makes an athletic move. I love his technique in the pass game though, as he doesn't play far from his body like Banks, his hand placement is great, and he's able to keep rushers attached to his block. This trait is likely why some scouts believe that Campbell will start his career as an offensive guard in the NFL. He's clearly experienced at tackle, but interior rushers won't make these athletic moves unless you're talking about like a Kalijah Cansey. So, you guessed it. Campbell not only gets 2 points for pass technique, but he also gets 2 points for run technique. Campbell takes a comfortable 7-2 lead. Run technique was actually really close and I almost gave them both points for run technique, but Campbell's is slightly better. Don't fear, Banks fans, don't fear Longhorns fanatics. It is still possible for Banks to win all 6 points still on the board. And now we get into a section where Banks will absolutely attract NFL scouts. When it comes to athletic traits, Banks' footwork is phenomenal, and his general athleticism is elite, enough to the point where both of these traits received A+ grades from me. With his footwork, he is so smooth and does a good job getting to spots and mirroring speed rushers when they make ghost rushes or just agile rushes in general. His general athleticism is on showcase when he has to move. Going upfield, he will get overly aggressive, but he will find his spot and make his hit. He gets upfield fast and won't be a burden in different run schemes. In fact, that's where I see him being super scheme versatile, and many top teams would consider Banks over Campbell for just this reason. I'll get into those teams at the end of the video, but let's continue. Another athletic trait where Banks wins is his explosiveness off the line in the run game. He pops up super quick and will knock back defenders in an offensive line bull rush type deal that I just couldn't find a better name for while writing this script. Overall, Banks just kinda reminds me of like a more raw Andrew Thomas coming out of college, and that is a big compliment. When discussing Campbell's athleticism, I won't say he loses here either. He's very explosive for his size, and his initial trigger off the line is fascinating. I see this a lot in his anchor step, where he launches deep into his side step and makes sure the edge is his. But there's a hidden weakness in this first step. He will come off the line too far initially and give up the inside rush too easily. And him being prone to inside rushes is actually his second highest weakness on my scouting report. But why is it this high? He can recover, can he? Well, his footwork is not up to par, another reason why scouts believe a switch to the inside is imminent. His agility is subpar for the offensive tackle position, and while he makes up for it in other sections, he's going to have to switch up his technique and be the aggressive one if he continues to play off the edge. I love his mentality about,
you give up 1 sack a game for 12 games, you're going to work at Amazon.
But he's going to give up these sacks if he can't fix his footwork. It's not the worst I've ever seen, but yeah, it's going to need some work. Campbell's true score as an offensive tackle is a 3.63 out of 4. As an interior lineman, it is a 3.63. He will work anywhere really. But to summarize this all, just based on the fact that Banks is one of the most athletic offensive tackle prospects to come out over the last decade, he wins this section and closes the gap 5-7. Finally, to wrap up this evaluation, it's time to talk about the physical traits. If Banks wins, he gets the W 8-7. If Campbell wins, he takes a big, comfortable win 10-5. Let's begin with Campbell. His play strength isn't the most elite thing by any means, but it is still pretty good. We're talking about a guy who has pancaked many interior linemen, will get beat off the edge but still push guys out of the way, and just outmuscle guys who are really good at getting to the quarterback. Now, he did get beat by Dallas Turner and Jared Verse pretty badly in 2023, but I thought he held his own against Ole Miss and South Carolina for the most part, two teams with great pass rushers. When it comes to the run game, Campbell's leg drive is great and he does a nice job pushing guys downfield off the rip. Sustaining blocks is not his strong suit though, and he will sometimes give up on the block if he gets beat. He's just really prone to inside swims in the run game, but his physical traits are still present there. Campbell's lack of footwork is really made up in his combination of physical traits and technique. He might not be able to stay with the guy, but he can push them off of their rush to give him more time to recover. He absolutely has some of the best physical traits of any offensive lineman in this class. Then we move on to Banks. And yes, he also puts forth some great physical traits. I absolutely love his sustained capabilities, which is where Campbell struggles. I love how he's able to keep a blocker with him in the run game. When his technique is on point, this is on point. But as I've already mentioned, his technique is inconsistent and can hinder his ability to sustain blocks. The upside though is absolutely there. Leg drive is also fantastic, but also gets hindered by his overly aggressive tendencies. Now, if I was only taking into account his sheer strength for his leg drive, this is easily better than Campbell's. But his strength and aggression will sometimes turn into lost reps, and that has to be pointed out in the leg drive. And for his general play strength, this is also pretty dang good. The one thing I want to point out is how he will flatten guys if he has momentum. Pull blocks, upfield blocks, these are his opportunities to show that play strength. But out of true pass sets, this could still use some improvement. So with that being said, who takes the cake? Is it Campbell and his great play strength but average sustain, or Banks with the more consistent physical skill set? Well, I lied about something to keep the suspense going. I said that Campbell's play strength is pretty good, but it is nearly elite, and it just needs some slight tooling to take that label. So for that reason, Campbell takes the W in the settling the debate matchup 10-5. But wait, you saw how tight this score was. The 10-5 score should not be a representation of how close these guys really are to each other. As I mentioned, my true score for Campbell was a 3.63 out of 4. Banks wasn't far behind at a 3.6. Top teams like the Giants and the Patriots are better fit for a guy like Campbell, but Banks will thrive in unique 50-50 schemes that switch up the run schemes quite often. So, the Browns or the 49ers. My final statement for today, these guys are both stud tackles, and do not complain if your team takes one over the other. Be grateful that your team had the opportunity to draft two of the best offensive line prospects in recent memory. Wait, are you not subscribed yet? Well, do it now. I release content like this all the time and would really appreciate your support. I'm Chase Keller from Chase Keller Journalism, and I will see you all next time.